Ladies and gentlemen, please join in expressing our appreciation to our chief guest and all the dignitaries with a very round applause of applause. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Himansa from Indian National Academy of Engineering, your host for the Annual Convention 2023 of Indian National Academy of Engineering. On behalf of Professor Indranil Manna, President, Indian National Academy of Engineering, we extend a very warm welcome to you to all the inaugural function of INAE Annual Convention 2023 in association with Shiksha O Anusandhan University, Bhubaneswar, IIT Bhubaneswar, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, Institute of Minerals and Materials Technology, Bhubaneswar, and INAE Bhubaneswar chapter. For those guests not familiar with Indian National Academy of Engineering, INAE was founded in 1987 and it comprises India's most distinguished engineers, engineer scientists, and technologists covering the entire spectrum of engineering disciplines. INAE functions as an apex body and promotes the practice of engineering and technology and the related sciences for their application to solving problems of national importance. INAE honors Indian and foreign nationals who are elected as fellows or foreign fellows by the peer committees in recognition of their personal achievements in engineering, which are of exceptional merit and distinctive eminence in new and developing fields of technology. INAE is a registered society under the Societies Registration Act, partly supported through grants and aid from the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Now, as a symbol of appreciation and reverence, may I now request the student volunteers to please present the bouquet to all the dignitaries on the dais, please. May we have loud round of applause. Thank you so much. As per tradition, for an auspicious start to the proceedings, may I request the dignitaries on dais to please light the lamp.
गणाध्यक्षाय धीमहि गुणशरीराय गुणमण्डिताय गुणेशानाय धीमहि गुणातीताय गुणाधीशाय गुणप्रविष्टाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि एकदन्ताय वक्रतुण्डाय गौरीतनयाय धीमहि गजेशानाय भालचन्द्राय श्रीगणेशाय धीमहि.
Thank you, sir. For all the esteemed guests who are present here today, it is now pleasure to give a brief introduction of Professor Damodar Acharya, Chairman Advisory Board, SOA University. Professor Acharya, PhD from IIT Kharagpur, has been the head of the department, Chairman JEE, Dean Sponsored Research and Industrial Consultancy, Executive Director, STEP, Chairman of Vinod Gupta School of Management and Director of the same institute. As Vice Chancellor of Biju Patnaik University of Technology, laid foundation of a robust technical university education system. As Chairman of AICTE, has been responsible for getting provisional membership of Washington Accord for India. As director of IIT Kharagpur, he has taken several path-breaking initiatives both in academics and administrative front to propel his institute to newer heights. His contribution to KVIC as an expert member is noteworthy. He was non-official director in the Central Board of Reserve Bank of India from 2012 till 2016 and independent director in Rashtriya Chemical and Fertilizer Bombay. Currently, he is independent director in National Aluminium Company, Bhubaneswar. He is in the board of several institutions. Establishing a few quality institutions in the country is his goal. He is actively involved in developing 3 universities, ICT IOS campus in Bhubaneswar, SRM AP University in Amravati, and Indrashil University in Ahmedabad. For last 10 years, he is the chairman advisory board SOA deemed to be university. May I now request Professor Damodar Acharya to commence the proceeding with a welcome address. Thank you so much, sir.
Jai Jagannath. Very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the organizing committee of INAE 2023 convention and on behalf of this university, SOA University, and INAE Bhubaneswar chapter, I extend a very hearty welcome to all of you, all the fellows, all the newly elected fellows, young associates, and the distinguished guest. Of course, I extend a very hearty welcome to our chief guest, Sri TV Narendran ji. He is the MD of Tata Steel. He doesn't require any introduction. So he has kindly agreed to come here and to grace this occasion. We are really thankful to you, sir. Also, I welcome our beloved INAE President, Dr. Indranil Manna, whom I knew for maybe about more than 25 or 30 years. So as my colleague and also as the director of IIT Kanpur, now INAE President, also Bits Pilani, Vice Chancellor. So I also welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor of SOA University, Sikha Anusandhan University, and without whose support, possibly we could not have arranged a function of this magnitude. And also, I take this opportunity to welcome the representatives from the 2 supporting institutions, 2 co-host institutions, that is IIT Bhubaneswar and IMMT Bhubaneswar. Now, so far as this INAE convention is concerned, this is the second time where this university is hosting the INAE Annual Convention. The first one was in 2023 here in this university. Of course, from those days, this university has really taken, there has had a lot of changes, expansion, both in terms of quality and also in terms of quantity in last 10 years. Of course, about this, our Honorable Vice Chancellor will speak a few words. Now, one more thing I would like to mention here, that in a place like this, Bhubaneswar, so you might be facing certain, problems with respect to accommodation. I sincerely apologize for all the inconvenience that has been caused to you, and these things were all beyond our control. Initially, we planned good accommodation for you, but due to many reasons, actually those things actually were cancelled, and we had to go for the next one. So I request all the fellows, young associates, and newly elected fellows, including foreign fellows who have come here all the way, to please bear with us. We'll try to compensate it with our warm hospitality, which I'm sure you will all enjoy. Now, with these few words, I will now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Pradipta Kumar Nanda, to speak as a few words. And Professor Nanda, as you know, he is actually a graduate of NIT Rourkela. I am also a graduate of NIT Rourkela. So he's a graduate of actually Burla, in University College of Engineering, Burla, and then postgraduate from NIT Rourkela. He did his PhD from IIT Bombay, and our Professor U.B. Desai was his guru. So, and all of you know Professor U.B. Desai, he will be here also with us. So Professor Nanda is a very soft-spoken but very effective person, and he has done a lot for this university and doing so also in future. With these few words, I will now request Professor Nanda to speak a few words about our SOA University.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all. Jai Jagannath. Esteemed chief guest of this function, Dr. T.V. Narendran, the Managing Director, Tata Steel, Honorable President of this INAE, Professor Indranil Manna, Chairman of the Advisory Board and also the co-chair of this function, Professor Damodar Acharya, and Executive Director of INAE, Lieutenant Colonel Shobhit Roy, all the immediate past President of INAE, Dr. Sanak Mishra, all Vice President, Professor U.B. Desai, and all other Vice Presidents, all distinguished fellows, the stalwarts of our country in this hall. I welcome all of you to SOA University, and it's our pleasure to host this event in our campus. We had another event, a similar event in 2013, and after 10 years, we are fortunate to host this event. As of this university is concerned, this started as a institute in 1996, and with handful of students and faculty members as an engineering institute. And then in 97, it was a management institute were added. And then 2004, 3 institutes were added: Faculty of Pharmaceutical Science, Faculty of Nursing, Faculty of Hotel Management. And 2006, Institute of Dental Science was established. 2007 is the landmark year where we have been declared as deemed to be university by UGC. And that year we added the Medical College, Faculty of Medical Science, and some hospital, which has earned a name in this region. And then we have added late Faculty of Legal Studies, Faculty of Agricultural Science, and Faculty of Veterinary Science we added 2022. We have 10 institutes, 15,000 students currently, 1,400 faculty members, 5,000 supporting staff spread across 5 campuses. This is campus 2 where we are here, and housing, and near is the campus 3, medical, dental, management science, nursing, and pharmaceutical science and biotechnology is this campus. As a university, when it started, actually, we have made a landmark in all the aspects, and we are ranked 15th rank this time in NIRF ranking. Our engineering is ranked 27th for consecutively last 2 years. And medical science is ranked 16th in the country in the medical category. And our management science is 57th. And 2 of our institute in top 10. Faculty of Dental Science is 9th and Faculty of Legal Studies in 8th in the NRF ranking. As far as this R&D is concerned, we have established 18 research centers, different research centers, headed by many eminent personalities retired from, superannuated from either IIT or IMMT or national labs. And we have 18 such centers, many of them are interdisciplinary in nature, and 60 research labs. And during COVID, actually, we had an exemplary contribution. We have 2,635 bedded hospital spread in Odisha and treating more than 30,000 patients, and they got cured and went home with after being cured from COVID. Even our faculty members, 500 doctors and paramedics were engaged day and night in this mission. Our university also is engaged in many proactive and societal connect activities and usual camps. Besides, we connect to the slums, and you have Club Jago, which connect to the slum area, educate them, treat them, and take care of all the children of the nearby vicinity. And we have established the culture of startups also. We have a SOA Innovation and Incubation Center. We have also established the Auto Incubation Center in our campus, and attracting the young people to have startups in our campus. Our campus actually spread across 417 acres, out of which I think 200 acres are the academic area. We have all instructional farms for the agriculture and for veterinary science. So this is how, in brief, about our campus and the university. And the university is also connecting to abroad university for the twinning program, for the joint degree program, and many adjunct professors from abroad also we have appointed recently for furthering research in the different emerging areas. With this brief note, I once again extend a warm welcome to our university campus. I wish this 3 days program will be successful, and we say comfortable stay and enjoyable stay in our campus. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, sir, for your very warm address. INAE is grateful for your gracious hospitality along with IIT Bhubaneswar and IMMT Bhubaneswar. It is now my pleasure to give a brief introduction of Professor Indranil Manna, President INAE. Professor Manna is currently the Vice Chancellor of BIT Mesra, Ranchi. He is an educationist and materials engineer. His studies on amorphous aluminum alloys and laser materials processing are highly cited. As a guest scientist, he visited different renowned institutions and universities abroad like Max Planck Institute, Liverpool Nanyang Technological University, NIMS, Japan, Unipress, Poland, and University of Ulm. He is a fellow of all the National Academies of Sciences and Engineering in India. He was both a DAAD and Humboldt Fellow in Germany. He is a recipient of the World Academy of Sciences Prize for Engineering Sciences in 2014 and was elected a Fellow of TWAS in 2015. He was the National Coordinator of MHRD Initiative Imprint, President of Material Science Section of Indian Science Congress Association, and President of Indian Institute of Metals. He has been conferred Doctor of Sciences from the University of Kalyani and Kazi Nazrul University in 2017. He served as the Director of CSIR CGCRI in Kolkata during 2010 till 2012 and of IIT Kanpur during 2012 till 2017. Professor Manna is now the 14th President of INAE since Jan 1, 2021, and is passionately involved in making INAE a national body for promoting engineering and technology. May I request Professor Indranil Manna, President INAE, to deliver the presidential address. Thank you.
Respected Chief Guest of the occasion, Mr. T.V. Narendran, a long-standing Fellow of INAE, Professor Acharya, Professor P.K. Nanda, Vice Chancellor of this university, our host, Dr. B.N. Suresh and Dr. Mishra, former presidents, and rest of the former presidents who probably are watching online, esteemed fellows of the Academy, the young engineer, young associates of the Academy, and the various awardees. Distinguished guests here, dear students who are trickling in, friends and members of the media. It always is the proudest moment in the career of the president of an academy to stand before you and welcome you all into the most important event in the calendar year of the academy, that's the annual convention. Why I say most important is because we firmly believe, and there are reasons to believe so, that every engineer in this country always would like to be elected a fellow of this academy someday or other. And in this academy, throughout the calendar year, we conduct various functions. The annual convention is the occasion, an opportunity for the president to give you a sort of a report card for the entire year. So please allow me to do that. We all would fondly be able to recall that Indian National Academy of Engineering, the only engineering academy in the country, was established in 1987 as an autonomous institution, registered society. Since 1995, this academy has been receiving grant-in aid from the Department of Science and Technology. So we are largely funded by the Government of India source. We represent truly the most eminent engineering professionals drawn from three specific quarters: the industry, the academia, and R&D organizations. We did some review and realized that the representation from the industry is not what it should be. Ideally, it should be 1/3, which is now somewhere around 1/4. So we are on our way to do a course correction and raise the strength from the industry. But we make it a point every year, the annual convention chief guest should be drawn from the industry, and a person of eminence, as eminent as Mr. T.V. Narendran today. We cover the entire spectrum of engineering. What it means is that we don't go by disciplines like mechanical, electrical, or computer science. We actually have 10 engineering sections which covers application areas which are related to the applications of those particular domains. If you look at the various engineering sections and their activities throughout the year, you will realize that we actually are devoted to help the country and the engineering fraternity achieve what it is required for the growth and progress of the nation. A very important point here is to remind ourselves that we are not just an exclusive club of engineers. We are an organization devoted to the cause of engineering. And that's why we have a very important role to play to promote the engineering profession in the country for the benefit of the nation. And we are very fortunate to have been led over the years by eminent personalities, including a former president of the country and all the stalwarts who have been the who's who, the real faces of engineering profession in this country. And at that particular era, when they were, one of them, for example, was the president of the academy, you possibly couldn't have found another better person to lead the academy. Very few from academia, mostly from the industry and government organizations. At the moment, the academy has 919 fellows on its roll, drawn from within the country, and 99 from various foreign countries. we should always remember that one cannot apply and become a fellow. It is selected through a very rigorous three-stage process of selection, and the success rate is roughly about 10% every year. So you can very well imagine, for a country of the magnitude of 1.4 billion plus, if we can only showcase about less than 1,000 eminent professionals at a given point of time as our fellows, by any means of imagination, we are extremely quality conscious, and we wish to remain so. We provide very important services to the government agencies. In fact, we maintain consultative committees with the Department of Science and Technology, the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, CSIR, ISRO, DRDO, AICT, Department of Atomic Energy, ACRB, and so on. We do consult, we do offer our services to industries, but this is our ambition that in the future we'll also have such very important and effective consultative committees with the renowned industry houses in the country. We are the academy that represents the nation to the Council of Academies of Engineering and Technological Sciences, the only international body for representing the engineering academies. So we are one of those 33 members, and we are a very active member. For example, at the moment, INAE is the chair of the Engineering Education Working Group, which is reviewing the engineering education policy and implementation throughout the world. We conduct various programs. For example, we host expert groups to define the roadmap, technology forecasting roadmaps for the future. The INAE chapters spread over the various places, various locations in the country. They conduct annual meetings, and they also take up certain reviews and promotional activities. We promote international collaboration. We actually conduct some bilateral exchange programs on behalf of DST and similar government agencies. We offer our mentoring services. Each fellow actually is invited to be a mentor to the engineering students in various engineering disciplines. We have a program where we elect young engineers below the age of 35 and retain them until the age of 45 as young associates. We also are very proud to be partner with the National Innovation Foundation to run a program called Frugal Innovation Nurturing Program, wherein we actually are not necessarily looking at billions of rupees of investment, but even with just a few tens of lakhs of investments, how a grassroots innovator can make a difference to the society, at least locally. We are proud to announce that during the period of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the 75-week-long celebration of country's 75th year of independence, INAE brought out two very important volumes. We possibly are the only academies in the country which actually were able to make such two contributions, one on landmark achievements in engineering and technology in independent India, the other one being women engineers in India. In fact, we are aware that representation of women in our fellowship is not what should have been, and we are very consciously trying to promote and make that course correction. We also published a report, in fact, which was released in the last annual convention, one of the last occasions, a report on technological preparedness for dealing with the national disruptions. Just very recently, the memory of the tsunami is very much vivid in our memory. We have also managed to trade through the very devastating period of the pandemic. Recently, we were able to manage, the nation was able to rescue the 49 workers, miners trapped in the tunnel in Uttarakhand. So we often, now and then, we come across such national disruptions. So INAE actually made a very important volume which essentially gives a guideline as to how countries should get prepared to deal with such exigencies. We publish Transactions of the Indian National Academy of Engineering, which is a peer-reviewed journal. And we have published also collected contributions in volumes called Mind of an Engineer, Volume 1 and 2. We publish research reports, various study reports, and so on through our 10 engineering sections. The INAE's annual calendar runs 5 very major events. The first is our Foundation Day, which is on 20th April every year. And in this year, the Foundation Day function was addressed by Professor Rangan Banerjee, our fellow and the guest of honor, and spoke on net zero and India's energy transition, followed by Dr. V.K. Saraswat, member Niti Aayog, who spoke on climate change and India's pathway to deal with that. Subsequently, the 17th National Frontiers of Engineering was held at the Birla Institute of Technology, Misra, in collaboration with ACRB on Atmanirbhar Technologies. Sri Jayant Sinha, the Honorable Member of Parliament, who actually happens to be, his constituency is very next to BIT Misra, he came and was gracious enough to speak on getting to the green frontiers, emphasizing the need for changing our energy dependence more on renewables. Alongside, INAE also celebrated innovations in manufacturing practices. This is a program where we encourage the students and scholars to showcase, not just present papers, but showcase models and products which actually could eventually make a difference to the engineering profession. The next important function of INAE was the Engineers Conclave, which was held on October 5th to 7th at the Raja Ramanna Center for Advanced Technology in Indore. And the 2 themes chosen for this event was laser technology for emerging engineering challenges. We are all aware that the RRCAT is the most eminent technology center, technology development center for various forms of laser and its application. So it was apt to choose that particular topic. On behalf of INAE, we chose another topic, which was engineering and technology interventions for clean and green India by 2047. The next event was Youth Conclave, held recently at the Geetam University, Vizag, on 3rd and 4th of November. And the specific theme that was addressed was innovation and technology for global challenges under 6 different sub-themes. We are proud to announce that or share with you a fact that we probably are all aware of the very important recognitions that the country offers to its bright minds in science and technology, science primarily, in the form of Bhatnagar Award and J.C. Bose Fellowship. Some years ago, the Secretary D, then Secretary DST, approached us and said that can we not do something similar for the engineering profession? And this discussion culminated into a new fellowship launched through DST and INAE joint initiative called Kalam Fellowship, named, of course, after the legendary Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, not just because he was the president of the country, but because he was one of the finest technologists this country has ever seen. And we also take pride in saying that he once was our president of this academy. So this Kalam Fellowship already has selected 45 fellows, and until 30th September 2023, these awardees have registered 61 patents. I'm not counting the number of publications, primarily to emphasize the fact that Kalam Fellowship is not for publications. In the lighter vein, we say that Kalam Fellowship is actually should be a 3-dimensional product, a prototype or a model. So it's a very rare fellowship where it's not just an award, where the fellowship is allowed to continue and complete until 5 years, only after the review at the end of the 3rd year gives a go-ahead. So there are instances where a very eminent engineering professional in the country was advised not to continue because for whatever reason the progress was not up to the mark. So we are extremely quality conscious and devoted to the cause of engineering profession. So this year we are glad to have 39 fellows, including and 9 more under a very special category who are directly elected by direct nomination. So altogether, 48 fellows will be inducted tomorrow, and including 5 foreign fellows, 15 young associates, and they are the future torchbearers of the academy. We also have a program where we mentor the engineering students studying in various engineering disciplines, and they are mentored by the young associates and the fellows of the academy. I mentioned about our association with various government departments, and one of them is with the Science and Engineering Research Board, which you are aware is responsible for conducting most of the research projects until now through DST funding. So there are 4 major programs: ACRB INAE Conclave on Atmanirbhar Technologies, with the aim to secure the engineering, the future of the country through engineering intervention. This also actually supported the 17th National Frontiers of Engineering held in BIT Mesra. The second is ACRB INAE Women Engineers Program, where we actually try to promote engineering profession and showcase the challenges ahead to the women members of the society and try to attract them towards engineering profession. We held a 2-day symposium on young women engineers on November 20 and 21 in the Tejpur University, steered by one of our own woman fellow. The topic was Technologies for Sustainable Development in the Northeastern region. INAE also runs a very special program, which is an outreach program for the Northeast, Jammu and Kashmir, and Ladakh. These are the areas which actually are worth visiting for your vacation, but we cannot claim that they are engineering contribution-wise as eminent as the metropolitan cities. The Government of India is very keen to turn around, change them towards more, so that they become more productive in terms of economic contributions. So INAE is holding regular meetings and seminars there to spread and also investigate and give a report to Government of India as to where lies the opportunities of doing certain engineering interventions in these regions. So there are a list of whole lot of programs that have held, and Professor Shivaji Chakrabarti, one of our vice presidents, is in charge of this outreach program. We hold also INAE ACRB Innovation Hackathon, where this hackathon is an exercise which is very popular among the young engineers and professionals. And recent one we did at the Geetam University alongside the Youth Conclave. And we hold similar hackathons in various other places. The forthcoming events under this INAE ACRB is on skilling, reskilling, and upskilling, need of the hour for self-reliant India. This is going to be next year, March, and pedagogy for training for teaching and research excellence, again in March, will be held in IIT Guwahati. The Prime Minister's office wanted the country to launch a very major initiative on digital gaming platform. And we are very honored that this onus fell on INAE. So we actually are taking this forward. Professor P.J. Narendran, Director, IIIT Hyderabad, our fellow, is steering this program. And we received 43 proposals, and only 7 of them were selected for funding. In the international affairs front, as I mentioned, that INAE is an active member of the CATES, and we took a very important role in producing the CATES Energy Report 2022. We run certain bilateral exchange programs with countries like Korea, South Korea. Similar programs also was held earlier with US and France and so on. As I said, we are the chair of the Engineering Education Working Group of CATES, and also a member of the CATES Communication Committee. Recently, we are going to have, we had a meeting, and in fact, it's going to continue, interaction with the Royal Academy of Engineering UK, and the theme is Green Hydrogen Exchange Program. I mentioned about local chapters. We have about a dozen, and we are not too happy with that. We would like to have every city in the country or region in the country to have one INAE chapter. So for that, we need more number of fellows, more number of young engineers, associates, and more number of members. And that's a new cadre which is going to be introduced to INAE very soon. We celebrate also 3 important national days, which are very important parts for the country's engineering charter. National Technology Day every year on 11th May, National Engineers Day held every year on September 15th, and also the National Science Day, February 28th every year. So this year, the National Science Day celebration was addressed by Mr. Kotwal, former L&T and our esteemed fellow. He spoke on technology, a prime mover for growth, showcased very many nice case studies, and brought out the importance of engineering. Then there was a panel discussion under the aegis of the National Engineers Day, cybersecurity and cyber physical systems, a very important aspect in the engineering world today. And we all are aware that how this is proving to be a major challenge to deal with. And we selected the top 5 experts in the country who spoke on the needs and the roadmap for country to be secured in terms of cyberspace. That was held on 15 September 2023. So we hold consultative meetings with CSIR and ACRB and others. And there was also a forum meeting on sustainability of built structures. So the Section 1 civil engineering professionals, they get together and they deliberate and then give a roadmap as to how we can proceed. We were served with a very unexpected advice from the Government of India about a year and a half ago that the government would like to discontinue financial support to INAE from 1st April 2025. The government was very clear that it has nothing to do with their perception about the importance of engineering or this academy. The government wanted the engineering academy to stand on its own feet. Now, engineering, I'm sure all of you would agree, is meant to provide solutions. And we decided that we'll show the path and we'll emerge as not only functionally autonomous, but even financially autonomous. So we are trying very hard towards that direction, and we have a huge activities already planned, and that's for another occasion to share with you, but we are on the right course. Just recently we held an INAE, an activity at the, with the help of the IIT Jodhpur. Now this is also something for the fellows to kindly note, that we have a premise in Gurgaon, and that is going to be used by the IIT Jodhpur as a joint activity center to promote their own outreach activities, promotional activities, translational research, creating startup companies, and so on. And INAE will be an intellectual partner for this. Now, friends, I'm sure we all would agree that the future of the country and its self-reliance, to a large extent, which our Honorable Prime Minister misses no opportunity to remind us that India has to be Atmanirbhar. If India has to be fully Atmanirbhar by 2047, we cannot just wake up on 1st January 2047. We have to work relentlessly throughout. And we have to address issues like energy, habitat, transport, defense, communication, and so many and so forth. So for the next 5 minutes, I would like to devote to at least one or two very major challenges faced by the society, which are very important for us to address towards this Atmanirbharta or self-reliance. Can I have the, yeah. So this is a slide borrowed from one of our very esteemed fellow and really a superstar today, Sri Somanath, the chairman ISRO. ISRO made the country immensely proud, probably like never before, by being able to successfully launch the rover on the surface of the moon in August this year. And it was not the first time anybody actually stepped foot there, but it was first that we went to the southern hemisphere of the moon. Now, this is a technological achievement which will be explained by none other than Sri Somnath himself today in the evening. and he was kind enough to accept our invitation. So this is, of course, one slide which should make every citizen of the country, not necessarily members of the engineering fraternity, proud. But then, as I said, that we have a long road to pursue, future ahead. So, next one. I've chosen one thematic area, energy. Now, if you look at this view graph here on the slide on the screen, you realize that it used to be 66%, but now India depends still on fossil fuel reserves to the tune of about 60%, which is a very large number, and very soon you'll see that how India actually is going to go towards making it 50% dependence on renewables very soon. But if you look at the breakup, you realize that if you see the one on the left side, the red bar represents the energy consumption by China. Now, in 1990, it was hardly about 30 years ago, it was hardly 10 to 15% of the global energy consumption. Today, it stands at nearly the 30% or more. It is quite expected because China hosts 20% of the humanity. But India doesn't feature yet in that bar diagram. But India also has, in fact, India just has surpassed the population of China. The explanation to that lies in the fact that the average per capita energy consumption in the country, in India, is way too low, not behind China or USA, but even below the world average. So for that reason, if you look at the per capita consumption, compared to 7,000 unit and above of USA, India is 1 order of magnitude lower, and still much lower than China or even smaller countries like France and so on. So we have a huge population and the youngest population in the world, 28 years average age. So obviously the energy demand is going to go up. And when it goes up, if we continue to be hopelessly dependent upon only the fossil fuel reserve, it's going to not only dwindle and extinguish very soon. Then what's next? So obviously we have to look at the future. Next one. So the pie charts on the right tells you that what it was 2010, and by 2030, the roadmap that it should be from 16%, it should be 50%. But the contributions are mostly coming from hydro and to some extent wind. What defies logic is, maybe it's in another, the nuclear is less than 2%. India is one of the most eminent nuclear energy harnessing nations in the world. In fact, someday in the future, we possibly will be one of the nations, very few nations in the world, will be able to establish successfully harnessing fast breeder reactors. I mean, fast breeder reactor is already probably commissioned, but the roadmap towards that will be, is already drawn up, and we have to realize that. The electricity generation through the renewables is gradually increasing, but it's not to the tune that is desired. So we really have to spend time and energy and attention to make sure that we are able to move towards self-reliance in generation of electricity through the renewable resources. Next one. The next part that I want to, I come from academia, so obviously I have an weakness or emphasis towards education, and that's the backbone of any society. If you look at the gross enrollment ratio as one of the indicators of our readiness towards education, we are lagging behind. We are lagging very significantly behind the developed nations like US, Germany, France, UK, and so on, but surprisingly even well below Indonesia and China. And we are only better off than South Africa and Pakistan and so on. Now, gross enrollment ratio at the secondary level is still reasonably good, stands at about 75%, but when it comes to tertiary, it's not even 25%. So this is a major concern. And unless we educate the nation, none of the technological achievements we showcase, like lunar landing and so on, will be sustainable. So the government has rolled out national education policy with certain very important claims or targets: equitable and vibrant knowledge society, access, equity, affordability, accountability, and quality, high quality education to make India a global knowledge superpower, and so on and so forth. India is going to have one national research foundation established very soon, overseeing the entire research scenario for the whole country. In order to do that, we actually need to create professionals from the grassroots level itself. So this is a tall order. Next one. Investment is very important, and that's one count where we are aware that even today, the investment from the gross development product, the GDP-wise, is only 0.7% in terms of research. Education towards whole education is over 3%. So this is an important rider. Human Development Index, drawn in terms of the health, education, and living standards as a function of the per capita energy consumption. This is a very important way of looking at the progress level of a nation. So India stands way below than very many nations. As I said, that a young and an aspiring nation certainly would like to improve the quality of living. And for that, we need a lot of energy. So we are at the 0.5 level, and there are countries, a small country like Iceland, which not only consumes more energy because it's a cold country, but also in terms of HDI are at a much higher level. So in order to bridge the gap, we actually need to emphasize more and more on engineering. Next one. So these are comparative figures and borrowed from a very important resource. If you look at the GDP, if you look back, compare from today, we have reasons to feel proud that we have made 2 orders of magnitude improvement over a period of time. But looking at 2047, we have a huge roadmap. Population is 1.4 billion now, is going to be 1.6 billion. So you have to feed so many mouths. We have to also provide energy, provide all other requirements for their life. Per capita income is still a very paltry level, but it's projected to be reasonable by the time we reach 2047. TV Narendran is sitting here, so I don't need to tell the audience while he's around that we are now at 125 million ton. We are looking at 500 million ton by 2047. But this is just an index. I mean, steel is the backbone of any progress of any nation. We need to construct roads. We need to lay more railroads. We have to have better aviation, better network of aviation. India is the 4th largest producer of cars, but not all of them are India-made cars. I mean, India-made, of course, but not necessarily the IP rests with India. So Tatas are one, Mahindras are the others, who are Maruti to some extent. So we need many more manufacturing agencies in the country. Manufacturing is one other area which is a major concern because it contributes less than 25% today. The Honorable Prime Minister says it should cross 30% within the next few years. So this is a tall order, and that needs to be achieved, and the possibility lies only in the hands of the engineering professionals. Next one. This is the last slide where I want you to spend a minute and think. We have just surpassed China in terms of population, but in terms of growth parameters, no one can claim that we are ahead of them, and not even a fool would say that. So we have a long way to go. And when we say that a long way to go, we also have to look at the huge population, and if we really want to turn it around and say that it's not a burden, it's a dividend, then the only way we can empower them is through education and through engineering interventions. If the per capita income has to grow and reach an order of magnitude higher from what it is today, then the spending per researcher in the country has to improve. And this is where we are lagging far behind not only the developed nations like US, Germany, Austria, and so on, but even nations like Brazil and China and so on. So this is where the Academy of Engineering would like to draw the attention of the planners and policymakers in the country that we need a much larger investment to promote the cause of engineering, and Indian National Academy of Engineering pledges to be the most active member towards that direction. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. INAE has a tradition of releasing its important publications during annual convention every year. As a part of INAE Satish Dhawan Chair of Engineering Eminence, important reports, books, or monographs are published by the chairs. For the year 2021-2022, Dr. B. N. Suresh was conferred with the INAE Satish Dhawan Chair of Engineering Eminence by Governing Council. Dr. B. N. Suresh is presently Chancellor, Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, Thiruvananthapuram. He was Director, Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, and Founder Director for Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology at Trivandrum in 2007. He was Member Space Commission for 4 years. He was President, Indian National Academy of Engineering from 2015 till December 2018. He's a fellow of several professional bodies in India and elected full member of International Academy of Astronautics, Paris, and recently he was elected as international member of prestigious National Academy of Engineering, USA. He has won several awards and honors. Prominent among them are Lifetime Contribution Award by Indian National Academy of Engineering and Indian Space Research Organization, Aryabhat Award, highest award from Astronautical Society, Karnataka State Rajyotsav Award from Government of Karnataka. He has also received Global Pioneer Award at Washington, D.C. by International Council of Systems Engineering, Washington, and IEEE Simon Ramo Award 2020 by International Electrical and Electronics Engineering, IEEE USA, for outstanding leadership in developing space program and space technologies. In recognition of his meritorious contribution for science and technology, Government of India conferred on him the National Award Padma Shri during the year 2002 and third highest national award Padma Bhushan during the year 2013. As part of the work undertaken during his tenure as INAE Satish Dhawan Chair of Engineering Eminence, he has authored a book titled Diverse Space Applications. The book is meant to showcase the contributions of Indian space program towards national development and to highlight the benefits derived by the society in general and nation in particular. The format chosen for the book has been kept simple and easily readable by the common citizens of the country. The book also would serve the administrators who are involved in the usage of space-based data in the country's development. May I now request Dr. B. N. Suresh to kindly come on the dais, please. We shall now request the student volunteers to come on the stage We shall now have the release of book Diverse Space Applications by Dr. B. N. Suresh. I request the dignitaries to present on the stage to release the book. Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Suresh to please share his thoughts on achieving yet another milestone in his professional journey.
Good morning to all of you. Chief guest of the program, Sri T.V. Narendran, President of the INAE, Professor Indranil Manna, dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, INAE fellows, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I must thank President INAE as well as the organizers for including the release of this book, Diverse Space Application, in such an important program of INAE in the annual convention. I think as already mentioned, the genesis for the book was the conferment of the INAE Satish Dhawan Fellowship of Engineering Eminence. One of the requirements while giving this fellowship is that they have to really produce something which is very important and which has contributed for the national development. While I think most of you must have seen the launching of the rockets, putting satellites, Chandrayaan, interplanetary mission, I'm sure that many of you won't know that what ISRO has done for the benefit of the common man and the society. In fact, as the name suggests, Satish Dhawan and his predecessor, Vikram Sarabhai, they both believed that the advanced technology must be utilized for the benefit of the common man and the society. And rightly so that ISRO, over a period of almost 5 decades, has applied the advanced technologies for the development of the society and for the development of the country. 3 important areas have been identified, one in remote sensing, another is communications, another is navigation. Of course, we have our own NAVIC system, which all of you may be aware. I think more than 50 to 60 space applications have been applied in association with the 72 departments of the government. That includes in remote sensing, for example, agriculture, water resources survey, disaster management, forestry, fishery, whatnot. There are many such applications. Not only they have been applied, they have been continued, and they have been used for the development of the country. So also in the navigation, today I think we have a very effective Gagan system which is used for the aircraft land and takeoff in all wherever problems are there, and our own NAVIC system, then of course vehicle tracking system, train information system, all entire train network is connected through our NAVIC system, and you can monitor everything what goes on everywhere. There are many such applications. As I mentioned, there are more than 50, 60. But what I have done is really compiling. It's nothing original in this. They are all available in big books, volumes, and literature. But then it has been brought in a very simple form so that any commoner can read and understand what ISRO has done for the society. And we must remember the person who started, and it was his ambition, particularly Sarabhai and Satish Dhawan. I think it's a big homage to Satish Dhawan when this fellowship was given. I'm very happy that we were able to compile this. And I must really thank Dr. Sanak Mishra, who was really responsible to confer this fellowship on me, and then accepting by Professor Indranil Manna subsequently. And also I must thank Chairman ISRO, and then there are 3 directorates who are really having the entire compendium of activities, that is the remote sensing, the navigation and communication directorates. I think they have provided tremendous amount of inputs. And while formatting, we have done it in a very simple manner, giving the objectives, the benefits to the country, how the technologies have been implemented in a shorter forum, and which are the areas covered in the India, and of course user perspective have been brought, so that it's not that we are telling, the users have been telling what has been done for the country. So once again, let me thank the organizers for providing such a nice platform to release this book. I'm sure that this will be very useful for the country to know how the advanced technologies can be reaped for the benefit of mankind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall now request Professor Indranil Manna, President INAE, to introduce our chief guest for Annual Convention 2023.
It's truly an honor and privilege to introduce the chief guest of Annual Convention 2023, Mr. T.V. Narendran, who is the CEO and Managing Director of Tata Steel Limited. Mr. Narendran, as the CEO and MD, has overseen the organic and inorganic growth of Tata Steel over the last several years, maybe already a decade by now. He has over 35 years of experience in the mining and metals industry. Mr. Narendran is currently on the board of Tata Steel Limited. He is the chairman of the Tata Steel Europe. He is the executive board directors of the World Steel Association as the vice president. He is currently serving as the vice president of All India Management Association. He is, of course, a fellow of our Indian National Academy of Engineering. He is the chairman of the board of governors of XLRI Jamshedpur and IIT Kharagpur. He is also a member of the Council of the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He has served as the president of the Confederation of the Indian Industries, CII, between 2021 and 22. He has also served as the president of the Indian Institute of Metals from 21-22. He was the co-chair of the Mining and Metals Governors Council of the World Economic Forum from 2016 to 2018. Mr. Narendran is a mechanical engineering from the National Institute of Technology, Trichy, and did his MBA from the IIM Calcutta. He is a recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award, both from NIT Trichy and IIM Calcutta. He is a Chevening Scholar and has also attended the Advanced Management Program at INSEAD, France. I'm indeed grateful that Mr. Narendran, despite his very busy schedule, agreed to come and be the chief guest of today's function. And there's one other qualification I would like to share with the audience here. He's one of those very rare CEOs who doesn't even waste 10 minutes to respond to an SMS or an WhatsApp, even if it's sent in the middle of the night. So a very rare quality. Over to you, Narendran.
Professor Indranil Manna, Professor Acharya, Professor Nanda, the Vice Chancellor, Colonel Rai, Dr. Suresh, Dr. Sanak Mishra, other esteemed guests, students, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you very much, Dr. Manna, for inviting me. I don't know, maybe a few months ahead. He blocked my calendar, and so I certainly couldn't say no. So I'm really glad that I'm here. Bhubaneswar is a city I come to very often, given Tata Steel's investments in Odisha, and it's the first time for me in this university. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here as well. The topic which I was given an option to choose, and the topic which I chose was more to talk about the steel industry, because that's where I've spent all my professional life, 35 years, as was mentioned. And also because steel is, I think, very important for the present and the future of the country. And of course, I will also close with a few themes which I think are important, not just for the steel industry, but also for the manufacturing industry or for the engineering fraternity in the country going forward. Dr. Manna talked about the importance of steel, and at the risk of a bit of repetition, steel is the most commonly used metal in the world, and it's 30-35 times more commonly used than aluminum, which is the next most commonly used metal in the world. So it's an important part of the economic development. And for quite some time, steel was a growth industry. This was post-World War II when reconstruction was going on. But somewhere in the 60s and 70s, when most of the developed world pretty much matured as growing economies, and the rebuilding of Japan and Germany and most of Europe had happened, there was a feeling that this is a sunset industry. Little realizing that there were billions of people in China, India, emerging Africa, Asia, etc., who were still on an early stage of development. So the world was caught a bit unawares when China suddenly took off over the last 30-35 years, and I think still a bit underprepared for what's likely to happen in India, and maybe later in the century what's going to happen in Africa. Dr. Manna talked about the fact that China was producing less than 100 million tons of steel. in 1990. In fact, when I started working in 1988, I don't think we discussed China much because it didn't feature much, and China was producing less steel in 1988 or 1990 than India is today. But today, India is the second largest producer of steel, China is the largest, and China produces about 8 times more steel than India. So that's the difference between the largest and the second largest. With a population which is similar today, that means the per capita consumption of steel in China is 8 times that of India. The largest Chinese steel company today is China Baowu, produces more steel than the entire steel industry of India. Right? That's the scale at which China is growing, and they want to become 200 million tons of steel. So I think Baowu will produce 200 million tons of steel before India produces 200 million tons of steel. So that's the kind of scale at which the Chinese steel companies are operating, and it's not just a scale. One of the big challenges for the industry going forward is the transition into a greener future. And I was amazed at the pace at which the Chinese steel industry, at least the bigger ones, are transitioning into a greener future. I was in China about a month back. I was visiting China after maybe 3-4 years. And I was quite amazed at what technologies they're working on, the progress that they've made, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we talk about the future of the steel industry in India. So the opportunity is there because, like I said, the per capita consumption of steel in India is 1/8 that of China. The per capita consumption of steel in India is 30% of the world average. And we have just about started building infrastructure in some sense of the term, right? And typically as countries grow, steel is used when you build infrastructure, you need steel. When the country grows richer and people start buying cars and automobiles and appliances and things like that, you need steel. You build railway lines, you build transmission towers. You pretty much need steel for everything, and that's why the steel consumption grows. And oftentimes in developing countries, the steel consumption grows at a higher rate than the GDP growth rate. But in India, traditionally, we've had consumption-led growth. So the steel consumption typically grew at the GDP growth rate, if not less than that. It's only just started changing. So this year, if you see, the GDP is expected to grow at 6.3, 6.4%. Steel consumption is already growing at 10%, and which is what happened in China over a decade or so. When China's GDP was growing at 10%, the steel consumption was growing at 15% a year. So that's what we expect to happen in India as India shifts from a consumption-led growth to more investment-led growth, infrastructure-led growth, and the steel intensity of that growth is higher. So I think this is a transition which is happening. The other reason why I think the steel industry is very important is because of the fact that unlike China, India has a lot of high-quality iron ore. Okay? China imports its iron ore and coal. Most of the good quality iron ore today is in Australia and Brazil or in Russia, countries which don't have a large population. So India is blessed with the fact that we are geologically rich, and I must say that we've not explored enough. This is based on what we know so far. I think exploration in India is still at a very nascent stage, right? So if we explore more, we will find more. And what is also important is most of this ore is in some of the poorest parts of the country. Most of the ore is in Odisha, Jharkhand, and Chhattisgarh, the good quality ore. There's also ore in Karnataka and Goa. So there's a great opportunity to translate this rich, the wealth that we have below the ground to prosperity above the ground if we manage this transition well. I mean, Odisha is a classic case of the kind of investments that are coming in. I think the other day, somebody in the government in Odisha was quoted as saying that the royalty revenue in the state, which was 10,000 crores a year in the last 5-6 years, has now become 45,000 crores a year. That's huge, right? So that's the opportunity that there is, and if that money is spent well, spent back in building the infrastructure in the state, providing facilities to the common man, that's a good cycle to have, and that's the opportunity that there is. So I think for India, given that we have the geological richness that we have, given that we have the opportunity of a huge marketplace, given that there is a push from the government to make in India, and given that manufacturing actually, to be more precise, manufacturing as a percentage of GDP is just 15% in India. There's no rich country with a manufacturing base which is not more than 25-30%, right? So that's a place it needs to be. And steel is in some sense a core supplying industry to any manufacturing. If you don't use steel directly, what you're consuming or what you're using is made with a machine which has used steel, right? So that's the all-pervasiveness of steel. Not because steel is the best metal, there are many other better metals, but because of the fact that it's good value for money, what do you get at 55, 60 rupees a kilo? You don't get too many vegetables for that, right? So this is a $1 billion industry investing, it's a $1 trillion industry investing billions, and still you have to make money selling steel at 50 or 60 rupees a kilo so that you can reinvest and make more steel. So that's the competitiveness of the industry. And over the last 100 years, this competitiveness has been made better and better because of the the technological journey that has happened, and in some sense the refinement of the blast furnace process, which has really over the last 100 years not had any competition, but I'll come a bit to that in the rest of my speech. So this is, to me, the opportunity. It's an imperative, it's a necessity, it's a great opportunity for us to, in some sense, change the destiny of Eastern India. It's a great opportunity for us to change the destiny of manufacturing in India, and also leverage the wealth that is God-given in some sense below the ground to translate into prosperity above the ground. So I think that, to me, is why it's important. Even if, and this is just to cater to the Indian market, the biggest exporters of steel in the world, I mean, 400 million tons of steel flows across border. Most of it is in Europe and places like that. But even if I look at going across, the geographies in some sense, the biggest exporters of steel are China, Japan, and Korea. And all of them import raw material and export steel, right? So there's no reason why India, which has a critical raw material like iron ore, can't be a big exporter of steel. So we are just about taking care of the requirements of steel in the country. So if you look at India's focus on exports, particularly manufacturing exports, steel is a natural opportunity for this country, for our country to earn foreign exchange, because you have a great opportunity. And most of the steel producers in India, if they've invested well, built the right facilities, can be the lowest cost producers of steel in the world, just like Tata Steel is, or JSW is, or some of the others are, right? So that, to me, is the opportunity which we should not miss, because there is a demographic dividend as well. There's a lot of young engineers passing out. And I'll again talk of the relevance, because there are few who feel that India can develop by just moving from agriculture to services. That's not going to happen, right? Globally, the best paying blue-collar jobs are manufacturing jobs, right? So if you need good quality blue-collar jobs, you need a strong manufacturing industry. Manufacturing industry creates employments beyond urban centers, right? Most of the services jobs are in urban centers, right? So if I look at Tata Steel's created more jobs in Kalinganagar than in Bhubaneswar, right? So, but that is the way it is, right? And that's the way it should be. Jamshedpur 100 years back was a village in a forest, right? But today you look at the, so you create urban centers. You're not going and creating jobs in urban centers. So this is why, for multiple reasons, manufacturing and industries like steel are very, very important. But it's not just an opportunity. There's a huge challenge, and I want to talk about that. Because steel industry accounts for 8% of the carbon emissions in the world. It's seen as a hard-to-abate sector. And if you don't do anything, this 8% will become 30, 35%, because many other sectors who are big emitters are transforming. You see the EV industry transforming the tailpipe emissions of cars, etc. But if you don't do anything in steel, because steel consumption is continuing to grow, because India, as Professor Manna said, I mean, you have to produce 500 million if you expect India to grow at 7%, 8% a year for the next 20, 30 years, because you will need that much of steel in the country, right? And like I said, I briefly mentioned Africa. Most people don't know that as the population of the world today moves from 7 billion to 11 billion during the century, 3 billion out of that 4 billion is going to get added in Africa. Right? Today, Africa has 1 billion people. They're going to become 4 billion by the end of the century. The per capita consumption of steel doesn't even count today. It's so low, right? We don't even know. We know the steel consumption in Egypt or South Africa or or Nigeria or something like that. We don't know for a vast number of countries in the African continent how much of steel they consume. The World Steel Association doesn't know for sure, right? So that's, again, a great opportunity which is coming up. So steel consumption is going to grow, and hence, if nothing changes, the CO2 footprint of the industry will continue to grow. So to explain the problem and maybe think about solutions, and I think that's where an INAE and engineering institutions beyond the steel industry are very important, because the solutions are multidisciplinary. Solutions cut across industries. So engineers need to apply their minds on this. Scientists need to apply their mind on this, because it's so critical, not only for the future of India, but for the future of humanity to find solutions. And there are a lot of startups doing a lot of work in this. Tata Steel is working a lot of startups in this area. We are going through a lot of this transition ourselves in Europe. where the policy framework, the infrastructure roadmap, everything is evolving very, very rapidly. Trade policies, industrial policies, the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism in Europe, will make it very difficult for us to stay in isolation if we don't transition fast enough. But there are challenges which I'll talk about. So to me, if you look at steel, and some of you maybe, I see Dr. Sanak Mishra is here, Mohanty is here, many of you may be familiar with the steel industry, but for those of you who are not, basically there are two ways of making steel primarily, if I simplify it. One is you recycle steel, because steel is infinitely recyclable. It's one of the most recyclable metals simply because you can separate it more easily. Because it's magnetic, you can sort it out and pick it up very easily. So before I get into that, not to run down my colleagues in the aluminium industry, while aluminium is the next commonly used metal, aluminium emits 12 tons of carbon per ton of aluminium. Steel emits 2 tons on an average of carbon per ton of steel. So while aluminium doesn't feature as a big emitter of CO2 on an aggregate basis, because the aluminium industry is much smaller than the steel industry, and possibly the solutions there are simpler. If you change your energy source, you solved half the problem. In steel, it's slightly different. So there's a recycling element of steel, which today accounts for maybe 25–30% of the steel production in the world, because that is determined by the amount of scrap that is available in the world. And the amount of scrap is determined by how much of steel you consumed in the past. Because steel takes, depending on whether you're in a rich country or a poor country, it can take anything from 20 years to 40 years to come back for recycling, right? And a vehicle in India will run for maybe 20 years before it is scrapped, if it is scrapped at all. I know that's why there's a scrapping policy, whereas in a developed world, it may come into recycling in 10 years. So you have a recycling component which is dependent on the availability of scrap. As you consume steel, you will generate scrap. 10% of the steel that you consume immediately comes back as prompt scrap. But the obsolete scrap, which comes back after it's lived its useful life, will come back only after 20, 30, 40 years. So there's a limit to the amount of steel you can produce if you are dependent on recycling. The other big factor in that process route is energy cost and the kind of energy you use, right? Because if the energy you use is from a thermal power plant, obviously that has its own CO2 footprint. So while you may not have a CO2 footprint in the process of producing steel, you have a CO2 footprint because of the source of energy that you use. So that's the other constraint. And typically the cost of producing steel through that process route is higher than the other process route, which I'll talk about, which is making steel using iron ore and coal. So this is broadly the reason why only 20–30% of the steel today is produced through the electric arc furnace route or the recycling route. And also the other constraint is the very high-end steels, where you want very pure steels, let's say for the outer body of a car, or sometimes for the oil and gas industry, etc. You can't produce through the electric arc furnace route, so you still depend on using virgin materials for that. But the CO2 footprint of producing steel through that can be 0.4 tons, 0.5 tons, which is 20% of the CO2 when you produce through the blast furnace route. And if you use green energy, it can be even lower. So Tata Steel is also putting up a recycling-based plant in Ludhiana. We put up a recycling facility in Rohtak a few years back. The next couple of years, we'll have this recycling-based plant coming up in Ludhiana, which will have a CO2 footprint of less than 0.2, right? Because we have tied up with Tata Power, a lot of the energy is green. So that's one way of reducing the carbon footprint of the steel that you can produce, but it's limited by the availability of scrap, cost of energy, qualities of steel that you can produce, etc. So the other route, which is a more popular route, is what we do today as Tata Steel in Kalinganagar, in Jamshedpur, in Angul, and most of the steel companies in the world do, which is you use iron ore and coal, you go through a sinter plant, a coke ovens, pellet plant, put it in a blast furnace, make hot metal or iron, take it to a steel melt shop, clean it up, cast it, roll it, and sell it, right? There you use iron ore and coal. The problem is the coal there is a metallurgical coal. Coal is not just an energy source. Coal is a reductant. So it's not just about substituting coal with some other energy source. You need something which act as a reductant in the process. Coal also, if eventually you have to substitute coal, you also have to think about the stability of the blast furnace, where the coal plays a role as a structural support for what is called the burden. So there are many challenges for that, right? So there is some work going on there. But what we are looking at, let's say in Netherlands, where we have a steel plant, where the policies are, I would say, encouraging us as well as forcing us to shift, is to say, can we replace a blast furnace with a direct reducing DRI unit? In India, we produce DRI using thermal coal. If there's gas available, you can make DRI using gas. And eventually, if hydrogen is available, you can substitute that gas with hydrogen. So the coal as a reductant is substituted by gas as a reductant is substituted by hydrogen as a reductant. But again, all that makes sense if the hydrogen is green, right? If that hydrogen is not green, then you really are not serving the purpose. But even there are challenges. So in Netherlands, we are investing in a process route which goes that way. But the challenge is you need a lot of hydrogen. If you want to produce 7 million tons of steel, I think our calculation shows that for that amount of DRI, we will need about 300,000 tons of hydrogen. So that's a lot of hydrogen, and if it's green hydrogen, that's a lot of green energy which will go into making that kind of green hydrogen. So the question is, while in theory that works, is that the best way to make use of green energy? Because somebody will say, if I have so much green energy, should I be electrifying processes or should I electrify the rest of the economy? And that will be much better use of green hydrogen. So there are these questions going on, there are these debates going on. And that's why steel, while there are solutions, the question is what is the economical solution? And this hydrogen needs to be available at less than $2 a kilo, maybe $1.50 a kilo. Otherwise the steel is going to be very expensive, right? So these are the dilemmas which are going through the minds of the people globally as we shift, right? There is another set of work which is going on, mainly driven by China, Japan, and possibly a solution for India as well, which is more about can we make better use of the blast furnaces. So I'll talk about that after I kind of cover why for India this transition into green is going to be a bit of a challenge. Firstly, as we heard, we are going to be adding a lot of steel capacity, right? So if you think about it, if you're making 100, 120 million tons of steel today, and we want to get to 500 million by 2050, you're going to add more steel capacity every decade than you did in the last 75 years, right? So that's the kind of capacity addition we need to have. Most of this capacity is going to get added in Eastern India because that's where the iron ore is. I mean, you already see the plans in Odisha. Tata Steel alone is planning to add about 20 million tons or 15 million tons in the next few years in Odisha, right? Eastern India doesn't have gas yet, okay? Forget hydrogen, I'm saying we don't even have gas, right? And if you were to invest in processes which will use gas, and steel plants are billions of dollars of investments, you need to first see the hydrogen availability and the price at which it's available, right? You're not going to invest $1 billion in a gas-based process expecting that gas will be available, and gas will be available in plenty at the right price, etc. So we've been talking to the government to say that in India's journey, we have said 2017 at zero, it's very important to have an infrastructure roadmap so that the steel companies can invest in the technologies with some sort of a guaranteed supply of gas or whatever else, or even if it's hydrogen, right? Otherwise, you will continue to invest in blast furnaces using coal, right? And once you build a blast furnace, you will run it at least for 2 re-learnings, which means 30, 40 years. Otherwise, you're going to write down value, right? So some of these calls need to be taken on a more holistic way. It's not the steel ministry alone which can solve this problem. Multiple ministries are involved. Multiple parts of the governments are involved. The state and the center is involved. Industry is involved. Academia and scientists are involved because we need to find better technologies, and I'll talk a bit about that, to solve our problems. Because what works in Europe is not necessarily what works here, right? So if I look at what is the other option, China has already done a lot of work on that. We are also doing some work. Tata Steel is already tied up with one of the technology suppliers. So that's to say, can we reduce a coal that we use in the blast furnace or in a steel plant by 60, 70%? Can we reduce it in the blast furnace by about 30%? Can we substitute any, because there's a lot of heating which is done today, which depends on the coke oven gases and anything else. Can we use those coke oven gases and other such gases less as an energy source and more as a reductant? And can we substitute that with green energy? And the work which Bao Steel is doing is to say that if they bring down that CO2 or coal requirement in the steel production process by 60, 70%, then the balance 30% can develop technologies to capture and use. Because the other problem we have is while CCU and CCS is not an option, carbon capture and storage is not something we've explored enough in India, Countries like Netherlands have a CCS option. You can store it in the oil wells nearby. But if you look at carbon capture and usage, again, you need to find a solution which can consume all that carbon, right? So if a steel plant is emitting 2 tons of carbon per ton of steel, if Tata Steel is 40 million tons of steel production, that's 80 million tons of carbon, right? So it's not about finding some small applications. So there is work going on. Can we use it to make methane? Can we use it, not methane, can we use it for sustainable aviation fuels? Can we use it for other applications which are large, right? So these are the questions going on. And if you reduce the CO2 by 70%, then the problem to solve becomes much less and is something that we can still be realistic about, right? So this is the work which is going on in China, which is going on in Japan. It's also about, can we inject hydrogen into the blast furnaces? We've also done it. Tata Steel has also done it. We've probably done the most in any operating blast furnace in the world. So there's a lot of work going on. And I say this because, so the solutions of the future, while the opportunity of the steel industry is there, but we need to find solutions which will make sure that this steel industry is sustainable, right? The metal is sustainable, but the way we produce that metal needs to be sustainable, right? I mean, the metal is very recyclable. It's fantastic metal to have. But how can we produce it in a manner which doesn't, impact the ecosystem as much as it does today? So there are a lot of, to me, operational, technical challenges. Traditionally, a lot of our work in R&D technology has focused more on products. I don't think as an industry we have done enough on process. We've been happy to borrow technologies or buy technologies from equipment suppliers, do joint ventures to get technologies, etc. But as we want to become more and more Atmanirbhar, it's not just about producing steel in India for India. It's about also creating those technologies which can really help us in the future and also solve the problems that may be contextual to India, not just pick up a solution which works in some other country, in some other context, and try and force fit it in the Indian context. So it's a great opportunity, but we have this challenge to solve on how can we reduce the carbon intensity of steel production, how can we scale up new processes which are very important. There's no silver bullet, there'll be a bouquet of solutions. There will be a recycling-based solution, there will be a blast furnace-based solution, there will be a DRI-based solution, there will also be CCU solutions. We are still at an early stage to look at CCS solutions. But even CCS, there are different ways to solve the problem. I mean, in Japan, they're already looking at having ships made, which they've I think Mitsubishi has already done it, to take the CO2 from the steel plants in Japan and ship it to Australia and store it there, right? So that could be an option as well, right? If you look at the Middle East, a lot of incentives are being given saying that we'll give you green hydrogen and green, green energy cheap, and why don't you make steel there? So earlier, traditionally, J.N. Tata and his son Dorab Tata decided to build a steel plant in Jamshedpur because it was close to the iron ore and coal and a railway line and water. But tomorrow you may choose to build a steel plant where there's green hydrogen and green energy available cheap, because that becomes more important than the availability, certainly not the availability of coal, but iron ore can also be shipped in huge vessels. So if you look at Vale, one of the biggest mining companies in Brazil, they are setting up centers in the Middle East so that they can ship the iron ore to the Middle East. There are people willing to set up steel plants there. So unless we look at these kind of movements which are happening and build options in India, you may also see steel production shifting out of India. Because somebody will say, I'll import the ore from Brazil, make steel in the Middle East, ship it to India, because freight is always cheaper. You can ship it from, let's say, the Middle East to Bombay cheaper than you can send it from Jamshedpur to Bombay. And that's a missed opportunity then, for us as a country, for us as an industry, for us as a region, as a state. So that's why it's important for us to look at not just the opportunity, but the challenges in the context of what's happening in the world. There are 2-3 other themes I want to talk about, which goes beyond steel, which is common, I think, across. I think very important for the country, for the development of the manufacturing industry. One is digitization. I think it's a huge opportunity, even before AI has come into the popular kind of conversations over the last year. because digital, particularly for process industries, and we've gone through this journey, Tata Steel, some of our oldest sites, the one in Netherlands is more than 100 years old, Jamshedpur is more than 100 years old. These two sites and the one in Kalinganagar, which is one of our newest sites, have been recognized by the World Economic Forum as lighthouses for digital transformation. So it can be done in old sites and new sites. And it's a great, you need to spend money because you need to build that infrastructure. I mean, particularly in our mining locations where we are in remote areas, you need to build that infrastructure even in the plants to have the right sensors in the right places so you measure the right things. But there's a huge amount of data that we generate every day, every minute. And typically we only capture a fraction of that data. And we only analyze a fraction of the data that we capture. So it's a very, very small percentage typically that we analyze and we take decisions. And we've driven a lot of improvement even with just that small subset of data that we capture and analyze. So look at the opportunity that there is as you digitize process industries. And even in terms of coal, we are able to make much better calls on the blends that we use and hence reduce the coke rates and the CO2 by using digital technology, right? It also addresses another challenge that we face as an industry. How do you attract engineers to some of these core sectors? One of the challenges is because of where we are located. But today, because of technology, you can be located anywhere, right? You don't have to be sitting next to the plant or in the plant. You can be sitting far away. If you look at the industry, like industrial gases, if you look at companies like Linde and Air Liquide and places like that, Air Liquide has a center in Dubai from which they run all their industrial gases plants in Africa. So they have some local staff in Africa to help with day-to-day issues, but most of the planning is done from Dubai. And they track data, they know if there's a problem, they send people in advance. There are very few surprises because there's no breakdown. As you know, traditionally, there is no shutdown which is just done periodically. Everything is on a predictive basis. And so you run with the minimum people across. I have been to the BHP Control Center in Brisbane, where sitting in Brisbane, they're running mines 100 kilometers away or 150 kilometers away. So it's possible. Tata Steel has started doing it. Our control center for many of our mining activities in Jamshedpur today. We've started shifting just to address the mindset issue. It's a mindset issue. We have a control room in Jamshedpur for the agglomerates, for the sinter plants, etc., which is outside the plant. But just moving people those 3 kilometers from where the plant is to outside was a big mindset change. Now, once you move 3 kilometers away, it doesn't matter whether you're 300 kilometers away, right? But this is possible. So technology is an opportunity to drive efficiencies which are not visible to us. It also addresses other issues like talent. Today, it's easier to attract an engineer if you say that you're going to join as a data analyst and you can play with this data, and that person has a far more opportunity to look at data and process industry than in many other industries. So we need, rather than expect that person to do the night shift and hang around on the shop floor, for which there are many other people who may be more capable and more excited about that opportunity, right? So we need to rethink of how do we attract talent, what are the kind of jobs that we want to give them, not just in steel, but other manufacturing industries. Otherwise, as manufacturing industry, we'll keep complaining that engineers are going to other sectors and not coming to manufacturing. It's not to blame them. We have to look at ourselves first. What are the changes that we can make using technology? The second part is, again, R&D. I think we've underinvested as a country. We've underinvested as an industry. We've talked about it a lot. I think there's a lot which needs to be done with industry and academia working together. We also need to see how do you bridge that gap between the early TRL level projects and the later TRL level ones which the industry is excited about. How do you deal with what is called that valley of death? What is the role? What are those institutions that can play a role there and create those ecosystems? Because again, if you look at Germany, UK, all these countries have very successful intermediaries there to be that bridge between a TRL 3, TRL 4 idea and a TRL 7, 8. So that pilot stage before you get from lab to commercialization needs to be handled very well because it falls between the gaps. And there's a lot that we need to do. And again, to attract the right talent, I think we talked of ISRO. I think it's a fantastic example of how Indian engineers have, kind of developed done world-class work at a fraction of the cost. I mean, we have sent teams to ISRO to really, my first exposure to ISRO was, I was given the fellowship in the ISRO campus in Ahmedabad, so that's when I had the opportunity to visit there, and it opened my eyes. And we sent a team from Tata Steel to look at the learning and development processes in ISRO. And it's really unique, and I hope Mr. Somnath will talk about it. I heard him speak about it at a CII event a few months back. It's really fantastic, and I think that there's a lot industry can learn about attracting and developing technical talent with the work ISRO has done, the Space Research Organization has done. And India needs a lot more of that, because how can we do things which are first in the world in India? ISRO has done that so many times, right? But industry has not done that enough. We have typically looked at somebody else and learned from somebody elsewhere. But why can't we have more to say? In Tata Steel now, when we look at R&D projects, we classify as first in the world, first in India, first for Tata Steel. While the first for Tata Steel is important, that means other people in India are already doing it. First in India is important, but that means somebody else in the world has done it. But are we ambitious enough to have enough first in the world projects in our pipeline? It may take time. There will be many disappointments. But if we don't invest in that, if we don't question ourselves on why can't we do that, if we don't excite our talent to take on such projects, it will never happen. 5 years from now, we'll be discussing the same things, right? So if we start work today, maybe 5 years from now, we will have some first in India kind of work. So technology, R&D, these are again areas. The other areas, I think we need a much, much stronger capital goods industry. One of the things China has done as it's grown its steel industry is it's grown its capital goods industry. Today in Kalinganagar, the blast furnace, one of the largest blast furnaces in the world, is being built. It's a Chinese blast furnace. The coke ovens for the last 10, 15 years, Tata Steel has been buying from China. So from an exporter of steel, they moved into exporters of technology, exporters of equipment, right? So in India, if we are going to add 300 million tons of steel capacity over the next few decades, that's at least $300 billion of investment. A lot of that investment is going to go for capital goods, right? And it'll be a pity if all that money is flowing out of India into other countries who are making those capital goods and supplying to us. So why can't we have enough companies in India making those capital goods, which not just for steel, for other, because as much as steel grows, I'm sure aluminum will grow, copper will grow, other metals will grow, other materials will grow. So I think there's a great opportunity for the capital goods industry to also piggyback onto this, because if 20, 30 years later, we are not Atmanirbhar in technology in many of these things, I think again, as engineers, as a fraternity of engineering, I think we should really ask ourselves. So I think that's where, so I think tomorrow's world, I mean, because a lot of people feel biosciences is the future, right? So there's a lot of multidisciplinary work which needs to be done. And I think institutions like INAE can play that role in being that catalyst, because it gets people from multiple disciplines together. And we should look at what are the projects which are multidisciplinary that we can add value. Because if it's a unidisciplinary kind of thing, I'm sure they will work themselves out, right? So I think these are the opportunities that there are, and the challenges that we need to deal with, not just as a steel industry, but I think as an engineering fraternity. And I certainly look at INAE and institutions like that to play an active role. So I think the good news is lots of opportunities, the challenges, but it's not something that we should assume will automatically come our way. We should not assume that 7%, 10% GDP growth will automatically happen if you don't invest in the fundamentals, right? We should not assume that steel companies, we should not assume that demand may grow, but supply won't necessarily grow unless we get our act together. And we obviously need to plan in a more holistic way across industries, across functions, and across the different, like I said, the academia and industry working together with the government. So thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
We extend our warmest thanks to our esteemed chief guest for sharing the steel industry perspective, significant challenges, related capita wealth, infrastructure quality, required for India's long-term prosperity and making India green. Now it's time to express our gratitude. I am delighted now to invite Professor Indranil Manna, President INAE, to kindly felicitate the Chief Guest. Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Damodar Acharya to kindly felicitate Professor Indranil Manna. I request Professor Damodar Acharya to kindly present the memento to Professor P.K. Nanda, please. Professor Acharya to kindly present the memento to Professor P.K. Nanda, please. May I now request Lieutenant Colonel Rai to kindly felicitate Professor Acharya, please. May I now request Dr. Renu Sharma to kindly present the memento to Lieutenant Colonel Shobhit Rai. Thank you, sir. At the end of the inaugural function, may I request Lieutenant Colonel Rai to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed dignitaries on the dais, in the auditorium, former presidents of INAE, Dr. B.N. Suresh, Dr. Sanak Mishra, vice presidents of INAE, esteemed fellows of INAE, young associates, faculty members, young students, and all the fraternity joining us online on this momentous day. On behalf of INAE, it is my proud privilege to propose the vote of thanks. It is with utmost gratitude I thank Professor Damodar Acharya and Professor Nanda for their kind consent for SOA to be a gracious host for this momentous annual convention in association with IIT Bhubaneswar and CSIR IMMT Bhubaneswar. I also thank Professor Karmalkar, Director IIT Bhubaneswar, and Dr. Ramanuj Narayanan, Director CSIR IMMT, for being partner to this event. Also, the credit goes to chapter of INAE based at Bhubaneswar for their stellar effort, the team at helm at SOA University for this organizing this particular convention, Dr. Samantre from IIT Bhubaneswar. I am grateful to Mr. Narendran, the chief guest, and our esteemed fellow who could spare his valuable time and be with us on this august gathering today and share the journey of steel in India and the future perspectives. We are grateful to you, sir, for being here. I am indebted to Dr. B.N. Suresh for making this far and unveiling the book, Dr. Sanak Mishra, former president of INAE and being the co-chair of the Annual Convention Organizing Committee and guiding us from time to time how to conduct this event gracefully. Thank you for your encouragement, sir. I appreciate the enthusiasm of our esteemed fellows who have traveled from far and wide and who will continue to pour in today and tomorrow for this annual convention of ours, which is one of the most important activities. A hearty welcome to newly inducted fellows of INAE and young associates who will be here with us today and tomorrow and be inducted in a befitting manner. I thank our partners for this convention, the sponsors whose names are right here in front of you, who have extended financial and logistic support in conduct of this event. Staff members of SOA and who have given us steadfast support in bringing this event together. My sincere thanks to Professor Indranil Manna, President INAE, Vice President INAE, Professor Desai, Professor Pandit, Professor Chakravarti, Organizing Committee, and esteemed fellows of INAE who have pieced together the events which are going to take place in next 2 days. INAE is sincerely thankful to Science and Engineering Research Board for supporting the cause of INAE. Last but not the least, I thank Team INAE, who has worked as one unit relentlessly and selflessly to uphold the name of the Academy to the highest standards. Before I hand over the mic to the MC for further notification of the programs and the closure, there is an important message which we have received from one of our fellows whom we wish to share with you with the permission of the dignitaries on the stage, and would like to share this thing with you. Over to you.
Good morning, distinguished guests at the convention, distinguished fellows of the Academy, ladies and gentlemen present at the INAE Annual Convention. I am Arun Ramchandani, FNAE, a technologist and practicing engineer for about 40 years working with L&T. My abrupt interjection into the scheduled agenda of the convention must seem out of place for most of you, and I apologize for not being present in person. My first brush with the Academy dates back to December 2004, when I, as an R&D engineer at L&T, helped Captain Mohan Ram, FNAE, organize a seminar titled New Product Development Advantage India at IIT Bombay. I presented a paper on new product development in the defense sector at that seminar, and my interaction with many senior fellows at that event caused me to aspire to someday become a fellow of the Academy. It was only a decade later that my name was proposed for fellowship of the Academy, and I did get an opportunity to present my body of work in the annual convention of 2015. The company where I work, Larsen & Toubro Limited, founded in India in 1938 by two Danish engineers that adopted our wonderful nation as their home base, prides itself for being engineers to the nation. We have created many engineering marvels in domains such as infrastructure construction, heavy engineering, energy and hydrocarbon, defense and aerospace. Our company has had a long association with the INAE, with about 10 of its present and past employees being fellows, and Dr. Ramakrishna being a past president of the Academy. We believe that the Academy has a key role to play in honoring and recognizing the leading technological and engineering contributions across the entire spectrum of disciplines by Indian technologists and engineers present in academia, research laboratories, and the industry. With the government announcing withdrawal of grant and support to INAE in the coming years, the Academy today faces an existentialist crisis. Our president, Professor Manna, has with missionary zeal set about looking at ways at which INAE can support itself through creating a sizable corpus which ensures long-term sustainability. We believe that this also provides an opportunity for INAE to transform itself as India transforms into a leading economy and a developed nation. My company, L&T, with humility and commitment to build an engineering and technological ecosystem within the country, is happy to announce a donation to INAE Corpus Fund under the Platinum category in support of its role as an apex body that promotes the practice of engineering and technology and the related science for their application to solving problems of national importance. We recognize that INAE brings together specialists from relevant interdisciplinary fields of engineering for a comprehensive solution for overall societal benefits and self-reliance of the country. We look forward that L&T's large engineering community gets access to the wide expert pool of INAE fellows, besides L&T getting an opportunity to support key INAE events that bring together the best engineering minds of the country to look at contemporary challenges which face our country. We believe it is our responsibility to support an ecosystem amongst the engineering community that fosters growth and development of the country. On behalf of our CMD, Mr. S.N. Subramaniam, who has most graciously accepted to support this endeavor, we wish this annual convention the very best and look forward to contributing our bit for the sustenance and evolution of this premier national engineering academy. Thank you.
I can thank L&T for this gracious gesture, what they have just announced, that is being the donor to INAE against the Platinum category, which entails a significant help. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of this inaugural function.